Hey guys, Beardy here. So in this video we're going to be having a look at how I prepare resin miniature figures, especially forge-rolled minis, for painting. So in this video we're going to cover everything from cleanup, priming and mounting the pieces on pegs for painting. This is really aimed as a beginner's guide, so perhaps you bought the Betrayal at Calt box set and you bought some resin goodness to add to your plastic Forge World collection, or should I say your plastic Horus Hersey stuff. So here I have Forge World's Mark IV command set, very nice set indeed, and we're going to go through preparing the models to this quality as you see here. So in front of you are the tools that we're going to be using. So we have a primer, in this case it's a Vallejo surface primer, again you can use any other primer you wished, some files, whether you can use either nail emery board style nail files if you wish. We also have a razor saw, which is very handy for removing the miniatures from their casting blocks. Also, since these are resin models, we're going to need some type of contact or CA adhesive. In this case, just a small amount of super glue. If we were working with some of the larger tanks or walkers or titans, we'd be using something more along the lines of a two-part epoxy for more stronger bonds. But for this job, just with figures, a simple CA or even a pound shop CA will do the job for that. We also have a scample and a few snips and other fair bits and pieces that we'll cover in the course of this video. So, with all that said, we'll start by preparing our models right out of the packaging for painting. So I have Forge World's Mark IV Command Squad, a beautiful set, some wonderful detail, beautiful one-piece cast banner and absolutely wonderful Mark IV Marines. So before we start doing anything, we need to prepare the model. And as resin, as material, is prepared in a slightly different way than injected plastic, should I say. So firstly, a lot of these parts are going to be coated in a very fine film of oil or a release agent, which is used in the casting process. And if we do not remove said casting or release agent, should I say, our paint will not adhere to the model and we will hate our lives. So for that, I have already unboxed everything, checked the parts for damage, everything is fine, there's no warpage and no bubble marks. So before we do anything, we're going to move our pieces aside and we're going to take a small basin of warm, not hot, but warm, basically lukewarm water mixed with a little bit of soap, and this is a small soft toothbrush, and we're going to basically throw our resin parts into this solution. Now we do not want boiling hot water, or what will happen is the hot water will make the resin so soft it will basically begin to bend and flex like it's made out of rubber, and it's not really what we're looking for this. We can use that method for correcting warpage in parts like gun barrels, but it's not necessary for this, so we'll cover that in a different video. So just let it sit there for a few minutes, just enough for it to heat up and begin to work off any of the release agent still attached to the pieces. So now with our parts allowed to sit in our warm soapy water mixture, we can start giving the resin parts a very light scrub. We don't want to be too harsh, as resin can be quite a brittle substance and we don't want to damage any of our parts. And we just give it a good old scrub, kind of working the bristles in all over, just ensure that we get that release agent off. Again with the banner, now make sure you support large pieces like this well, make sure you don't accidentally snap them. Also don't scrub too hard or you will do damage to the surface of very thin parts of resin. So I'm actually going to leave it down, just give it a gentle scrub, and we'll just keep working our way through the parts in exactly the same manner. So now with our parts scrubbed, we need us to give our parts a quick rinse in just clean water, just to remove any of the dish soap that might be left on the models. again, because we don't want this reacting with our paint, so just a quick shake of each part in some water. It's more than enough to do this. Okay, with our parts allowed to dry, now we need to start removing the parts from their casting blocks, any flash or seam lines. So we're going to take this marine here, and I'll talk you through how we can go about cleaning this one individual guy, and it's exactly the same throughout. So first things first, we'll have a look and see if we find any seam lines, and what these basically is a very fine line, a raised fine line you'll find along the edges or the halves of a figure, and that is actually quite literally the physical mould halves that leave a small line when it's moulded. Now these are quite well moulded, so there isn't much in the terms of seam lines. I think there's one on this side, yeah. So if we take this little line here, you can see how it's catching the light, and I'm just going to take a hobby blade or a scalpel, and I'm just going to run the blades over the seam. Just using the weight of the blade. I'm not putting any real force behind the blade because I don't want to misshape the resin. And once again, I'm just going to take a look and see, can I see any more seams? No, everything seems very clean. So again, we're going to keep inspecting the parts for seam lines, just looking along the edges of any piece. Can we see a line running through it? And then if we do, just taking the edge of our blade, just removing it like so. Very simple. GW do have a tool especially for this, but it's not really necessary. You can do it on a hobby blade just as easy. Once again, we're looking for any type of flashing, and flashing is any type of residue left over from the moulding process. There's a bit of flashing on the banner, which I'll show you in a moment. Also, we're looking for little tabs like this, which are part of the moulding process, so we can remove them. Again, just with a hobby knife. These should just quite literally come straight off with no resistance whatsoever, and we just clean up that little spot there. Often you will get mostly seams on parts like arms and swords, so this is what we refer to as flash. It's this element here, which is like excess or bleed through from the mold, so that has to go. So once again, I'm just going to very, very gently remove this because this piece is very fragile, and I don't want to cut into the actual kit part, as it would not be too difficult to do so. So again, I'm just doing very little cuts at a time, and I could do, and I can come back in now and clean that with a file. In that case, don't risk cutting into the plastic. Also, we have a rather large seam on his elbow plate. This actually looks almost more like a mold slip. So sometimes the molds can slip if they're not secured correctly, and we'll get a step in the two part halves. So I'm just going to basically take my hobby blade, keep it at 90 degrees, and just basically cut away that step and blend it all together. So now we're going to start removing the cast plugs from the actual parts. Now, in some cases, it's better to leave them on their cast plugs because they act as a handy painting tool. Especially for figures when they're attached by their feet, and since we don't have to paint the bases of their feet, and I base my model separately, I'm going to leave them on their casting plugs. However, there are parts you will have to remove, which is this central little peg here, which is a part of the moulding process that needs to go, so we can cut that away. And the same on this figure, once again removing this casting plug once more. Now, to remove resin from their blocks, there's different tools you can use. Again, a good hobby blade with a fresh blade is quite good for this job. You could use hobby snips, only really good for certain jobs. Due to the fragile nature of resin, you can damage your parts very easily with snips if you're not careful. And probably the most important tool is a razor saw. You can buy these online from most hobby shops for about €5 or €6. They're very good and well worth the investment, and they're perfect for this job. So we're going to start with the banner. Now the banner is a little bit awkward the way it's set up, so it might actually be better to remove it with the snips. out of fear of damaging the parts. And as you can see, I have to apply very little pressure. I'm being careful not to damage any of the parts. It's because it's very easy to do it. And then I'm going to cut a little bit above the central column. There we go. And you also notice when I'm cutting it away from the tab, I hang on to the part so it doesn't fly away and get lost, which does happen. Okay, now that we have our part removed from the casting plug, now there's quite a bit of flash and cleanup that's been done where the pegs once sat. So we're going to take our hobby knife and we're going to start removing the burrs where the casting plugs once were, just to blend that in and take away the blemishments. Now with everything removed from their casting plugs, we can start mounting our separate parts onto pegs to help us paint it better. So for this I just use a little bit of a cocktail stick or a kebab skewer, piece of glue tack or poster tack, or white tack also will do this job, and just good dollop on it. I'll just push it into an area that will not be visible once I paint it. Again. Like so. And that will be strong enough to keep it in place while we paint it, whether it be with an airbrush or a paintbrush. Alternatively, we can use a paper clip that I've just folded out straight, and using our pin vise, if you get either the Army Painter or Citadel or GW pin vise set, you'll find that most of the drill bits are actually corresponding to paper clip sizes. So by just simply matching them like this, very simple way of doing it, get an appropriate sized drill bit, and we'll find a piece here that we could use. We'll take this piece here, and we'll just drill not the entire way through the model, and be careful because resin is a little easier to drill through than plastic, so we don't want to go too deep and drill through the piece. That will do, and we can basically just insert our paper clip like so, and then we can take, a snips. I would not recommend using your plastic snips, but an actual wire cutter style snips, and cut that to length. There we have a very handy holder, and I'm going to do this for all the various parts and mount them up for painting. With everything now attached to pegs and pins for painting, now we can start applying a primer coat to our minis. Priming is basically like a preparatory paint layer that we put down. It is not the same as base coating. That is a somewhat different step and purpose. So a primer is designed to both give you a completely even painting surface, which in resin can be very important, for the simple fact being sometimes resin can have very small pits and microscopic pitting just due to the molding process that is attributed to resin. And also it helps us see any blemishes or any other imperfections that we've missed. So priming is more so just to make sure that everything is in order. It also gives us a totally 100% even and smooth painting surface to work on. I would strongly recommend you prime your models, especially resin models. So I have my airbrush set up at about 15 psi, and now I'm just going to apply some very thin coats of primer over the minis and maybe give it 2 or 3 thin coats. Best way to do it without losing detail. There is my very basic beginner's guide to working with resin miniature figures. I hope you found it very useful. It's quite basic, but again, most figures, with the exception of the bigger tanks and titans and what have you, are very simple to work with. And when the time comes when I actually have one of the bigger resin kits on the workbench, we will do a video on preparing the bigger resin kits, because there's a slight difference. Sometimes they do require a bit more work, as sometimes it'd be bigger warpage and what have you, but we'll cover that in a later video. So before I sign off, I have to mention, of course, there is a health warning I have to give while working with resin. So resin, and especially resin dust, can be quite dangerous. Now, I didn't mention this in the video because when we were working, there wasn't much sanding involved. However, if you're new to resin or just unaware of the potential health risk, resin dust can be quite dangerous to your respiratory system. So if you're doing any type of heavy sanding or scraping with resin and you're producing a massive amount of dust, I would strongly recommend you wear some type of face mask or respirator just to keep it away from your lungs. Also, by using a technique known as wet sanding, which is basically you just dip your finger in water and moisten or dampen the subject you're working on, and that helps bind with the dust and stop it from going airborne. So I would strongly recommend you use those two techniques. Again, I should have mentioned it during the video, but it just didn't come up. So with that out of the way, I hope you found this video useful, guys and girls. Please comment, rate and subscribe, and share it with your friends if you think they might enjoy it. So to stay tuned for more videos and more tutorial videos coming up in the near future. We will have a video dealing with how to work with transfers very soon, and I hope you guys will find that as useful and enjoyable as this. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe, happy gaming, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.